Today I'm going to show you how to make your own sketchbook. So these are relatively easy to make sketchbooks that you don't need any special tools for. They have a beautiful cross binding on the back, at least sometimes. And I use them all the time for my sketching activities. I like to add envelopes in the back to store notes, tools, or things that I find outside. The advantage of these sketchbooks is that you can use any paper you like, either paper you don't get as easily in a sketchbook like 100% cotton watercolor paper or colored papers, or you could use up paper that you wouldn't use otherwise, and that's what happens to me a lot of times. So just a disclaimer, I'm not an expert bookbinder and I didn't learn this technique anywhere from a professional. There are probably a lot of things that I do wrong, particularly with the binding. So please bear with me. This is just what works for me, what I use to make my own sketchbooks. And nonetheless, these sketchbooks you can handle them pretty roughly. They will last at least a few months, even if you throw them around in your backpack or something like this. I think they look nice, so I like to make them and use them. So here's what you will need. 12 to 16 sheets of paper, at least in A4 size. So A4 will give you an A5 sketchbook. I prefer watercolor paper in 200 to 300 GSM. Then 2 pieces of hard cardboard. If you buy your paper in pads, then you can use the back of these pads. Fine white thread, little bit of a thicker thread, a big needle, scissors, a ruler, a pencil, and optional a folding bone. So let's start by folding our paper in half. I typically do it without measuring, so I take my paper, line it up here at the edge, take my folding bone, and then go like this. Of course, this will be easier if you take thinner paper, so I wouldn't advise any paper that's thicker than 300 GSM. If you're done, then align your paper, and then I usually just use a clamp to fix these papers in place. Take my pencil and make 4 lines across the paper. You can measure these if you like. Just make sure that you mark every single sheet of paper. Take a single sheet like this and make holes into these where these markings are. And you repeat this with every single sheet. Then you take 3 to 4 single sheets and stack them like this. And then I take my first 3 pages, look for the first hole, and then punch through. If it doesn't align 100%, that doesn't really matter. After you've sewn your first 3 sheets together, then you'll take the second stack and with the same piece of thread, you continue in the same manner. And when you reach a point where you can see the next piece of thread, then you move your needle through like this and just anchor the thread a little bit better. And I always do this to add a little bit more stability to the whole thing. At this point you can also make a little knot down here where the pieces line up, again to add a little bit stability. And then you add your third stack of paper. You could also fix this with, again, down here with a clamp. Make it a little bit easier to handle. And then you just do the same thing here. Go down on one side and then go through the next to the outside. Add a little knot. And when you notice you run out of thread, then you make a knot. That's very important. And simply use more thread. And just like that, you have the core of your new sketchbook. So it's already usable at this point, but I imagine you will want sort of a cover for it. And this is where these 2 cardboard pieces come in. So I have 2 pieces of cardboard that will fit around my sketchbook, like this. And now I will make markings in the same places where my thread goes. So this is approximately 1/2 centimeter, and I will now take the biggest needle that I have and make holes through this. So what you want to end up with is something like this, where you can pull a bigger thread through. I'm taking an even bigger needle for this. And this needs a little bit of effort. I will start by pushing through. I attached the thick thread to the part of the binding that is already in place. When I reached the cardboard, I pushed the needle through it from the inside and fixed the thread on the binding again with a little knot. Make sure you don't give the thread too much play, but don't pull it too tight either, so the cardboard will have to open and close later. And then I cross over to the next section and fix my thread again with a small knot. Continue like this until you reach the top and then turn everything around. Do the other half of the cross binding by fixing the thread on the cardboard again with a small knot, like you did for the other side, and then work your way across the binding like you did before. And repeat the whole process. And this is what works for me pretty well. So this is the finished sketchbook. So you can see it's not that hard. It gives a pretty result with this pretty binding on the back. And just like this,